Ladies and gentlemen, it is that Hung Circus. A time of the year when I make a fool of myself by trying to predict the season, and then I'll end up predicting myself to win the title, when they inevitably end up in a relegation battle with Upside Down. But let's just crack on into the video with my predictions. So
A
I've got my
package for Dan's order, placed on the 22nd of March, should arrive Tuesday, the
Alexa
5th of April.
off. Well, my Alexa has had a hair visit during this recording, but we're just going to continue. I've got my top 14. I've also got my driver to follow, a title dark horse, the team dark horse, the other predictions that I have. I've got 5 of them. My driver's top 5, and then of course my driver to flop, the one driver who has switched teams that I am anticipating will do utterly dreadful. 14th, I have gone racing the WTCL champions now. Of course, their team principal hasn't even got a third driver yet. As I would call this, they still haven't signed up for the season, so whether or not they have or not is up for debate. The only 2 drivers confirmed at the moment are Edgar O'Connor and Connor Ryan, the Irish Dream Team. But to be honest, that's an ITCL standard lineup. Equal cars pretty much mean that this is not going to be the best of seasons if you're an upside down racing fan. But you at least take solace in the fact that you're the reason that Waterford aren't in WTCL. So, whilst you might have Irish drivers, you also prevented the Irish from actually having a team in the series. So thank you for that on behalf of all British people. 13th place, I'm going to go for the team that's aiming to win the title. But I'm meant to say I'm biased, aren't I? De Bergen are coming 13th. They have £3 million. That's not going to last them even half the season upgrades. Hrivik Singh, good driver. GU is a driver, and the less said about Andreas Lorenzo, the better. And that's not even considering that they have perennial pizza maker Vincenzo Grassi sat in reserve, as well as Hungarian drunk bastard Mark Tim as the only youth driver of the team. And let's be honest, he's got the pace of my 88-year-old nan who hasn't stepped out of her chair since 1943, a time when Germany was actually a bit of a bastard. But nonetheless, I am predicting Bergen to finish 13th. And whilst I expect Hrivik Singh to be a interesting driver, putting in the odd good result here and there, albeit mainly down by the fact that his team is basically Haas 2021 if it wasn't for Upside Down. Although this does leave me onto the first of my other predictions. And that is, onto the first of my random predictions, and that is that GQ will be the flop of the season. Now, we've seen drivers get injured many a time, and more often than not, they have come back and been utterly woeful. I mean, Fernandino Corleone went from a title contender in Season 2 to the Drake number 2 behind a funny German man in Season 5. Konstantin Nasichenko was carrying Cosworth, came back. I mean, to be fair, he recovered, albeit he did definitely look a little bit slower. As for GU, I mean, he hasn't got a particularly appealing pedigree in WTCL anyway, having been a stuff or flop who wound up for the struggling Ironside team. And let's be honest, him getting injured was probably the best thing that ever happened to that team. And now he has arrived at De Bergen, albeit only on a 1-year deal, although there is an option for that to be extended for 2 years. Added to the fact as well that De Bergen have put him on a big fat 200k, and GU probably won't see the point in actually needing to try, especially as he'll think that he has the measure on Indian teammate Hrivik Singh. As a result, I can see GU being a bit of a waste of time, and I'm predicting this man will not score a single podium throughout the entire season. Heck, I don't even think he's going to get into a top 6 finish this season. Woefully outclassed by Singh, and his next team, probably some ITCL fodder like Velocita, or maybe when they go down, Upside Down Racing. But that is speculation. 12th place, I have gone for Platinum. Now, Platinum were once a big team. The issue is that this is Season 5 and not Season 2. Go back to Season 2, and Platinum were arguably one of the most exciting teams in the grid. In a season full of chaos and wide open grids, they managed to finish 3rd, behind Drake, yeah, it was a weird season, and Esther, who always seemed to be like a bit of a punching bag. It doesn't matter how many times you beat the fuck out of them, they always just seem to come back from the dead. Now, Platinum this season, they look good. Very good, in fact. With Hrivik Singh proving that he was a very accomplished second driver, and Stefania Nicolao proving that she was one of the fastest female drivers on the grid. And then she just forgot how to be fast, apparently. Season 3 came, and, well, Platinum did work. Switching over to that impressive Honda, which nearly put the club team into bankruptcy, to be fair. They finished 4th in the standings, a step down from season 2, but still impressive. Not quite on the pace of fellow Honda teammates Leicester, who nearly won the title, but they managed to edge out Stoffel at one of the worst of the season, with Nicolai once again proving just how quick she could be as she finished P5, whilst Derek Singh finished P8. So, heading into season 4, there was optimism. The issue is that they stuck at Honda. And Honda in season 4 was basically, if you weren't Esther, you were fucked. With Stoffel drowning in P8 despite having one of the highest wage bills on the grid, and Platinum, well, they were fucking terrible. They finished P11 that season, only beating out 2 Alfa Romeo teams and a team which was Project R. Nikolaev's apparent pace dried up quicker than a virgin woman's vagina. Probably shouldn't say that. And whilst the win, Imola would have given the team some hope, Nikolaev only scored 56 points that season. And in the other seat, Lichtsteiner, other than an impressive Grand Dull weekend and a podium at Laguna Blow-Uppy, it's not particularly impressive, as he only scored 90 points and beat out his teammate in the first season of the team. So we now head into season 5, with the cars mostly equal, and Nikolaev low on confidence, and a Lichtsteiner who seems to be more attracted to actually crashing into other people than actually winning. Whilst Platinum do have some good finances about them, there's only so much you can do with money. And unfortunately, when you have 2 drivers that are just not particularly firing on all cylinders, it's going to be a ropey year for Platinum. And I'm predicting that they're going to be one of the shocks of the season, as they're going to finish 12th in the standings, and they're going to have a very, very poor season. In 11th place, we have Shogun Yakai. Now, last season, Cosworks were many people's, including mine, tipped to go down. However, what we didn't predict was Project R deciding that they were going to try and do that they were going to be a cure for insomniacs everywhere, as they decided to fall asleep at the wheel, and, well, got relegated. However, this season, Shogun Yakai have a whole new lineup. Well, sort of. Firstly, Linda Rodel, arguably one of the breakthrough stars of season 4, has joined on 160k on a 2-year deal. Now, there's every possibility that this could just be Linda Rodel of season 3 again, and if so, then this team is more fucked than a prostitute on a Saturday night in Leicester. But nonetheless, she is a good driver, proving her ability last season at Drake as she put in some fine performances, particularly towards the end of the season, and proved herself to be one of the more accomplished female drivers not only on the grid, but also one of the best drivers just generally in the midfield. Unfortunately, they've kept away Betsky, which is probably going to cost them top 10. Now, there's no denying Betsky is a decent driver on paper, but for whatever reason, she just hasn't quite been able to put the results forward on the track. However, they've also announced former Shrewsbury Endurance Amir Iskander as the one. And whilst Amir Iskander is actually almost as old as their team principal, he is a solid driver who will probably be able to fight, or at least the top 5 finish if given the car in the Rumble. Unfortunately, they've also got Crayon Stifler as sure as the youth, which means if any of their drivers get injured, they can wish goodbye to any form of points. I don't think Shogun Yakai will quite have the driver lineup, or just, the experience with their principal to actually challenge some of the big boys. But I'm predicting that it'll be a quietly solid year, with Linda Rodel winning at least one sprint race, Dorothy Betsky drowning harder than an infant in a swimming pool, and Amir Iskander proving a very competent Rumble driver before he probably fucks off to retirement at the end of the season, after his 1-year deal is up. Moving into the top 10, and I'm predicting that we're going to see a fall from grace for Nürburgring. Now, Nürburgring last season went into the season with quite a bit of hype about them, to be fair, with many people thinking that they could actually beat out Shrewsbury. And to those fuckers, I say, how dumb were you? By halfway through the season, the Moor had been kicked off to Singapore, and was replaced by Ezio's bitch from season 2, Benjamin Madison, who had spent the last 2 seasons stat padding in the endurance. And he was quickly found out as an endurance stat pad merchant like Jerome Mathers, who I stupidly waited once upon a time. Now, Nürburgring's issues would be fine if, you went out and got a competent Rumble driver. The issue is they appointed Liam Henry. Now, Henry on paper has a decent pedigree. 22, young, has driven in WTCL, except that he's never been particularly impressive. I mean, if you look at his previous seasons, go back to season 3, and Liam Henry was driving an ITCL. And let's be honest, he was pretty shit. Admittedly, his teammate was Edgar O'Connor, and he battered him, but this is also Edgar O'Connor, and Henry also only managed to finish 15th in the standings, so you're still not going to get particularly excited about that one anyway. For season 4, he spent it at Drake, and if my help wants to load, we'll go back to that one in a minute. But nonetheless, it was a mildly meh campaign for the Canadian. Now, whilst Temple is young, there's every possibility that he could prove all the haters wrong and turn out to be one of the breakthrough stars of the season like Linda Rodel. I just don't see it happening. Combines this as well that Louis Cordova is now 35 and has been given a 3-year deal on a big fat 240k race contract. And Cordova, after seeing the mess that they're in, probably won't see any reason to keep pushing, a bit like Damian Dice was in the last season at Paraguay. And whilst Madison still has time in his hands, he's getting a bit more than time to save his drive as he's beginning to look completely outclassed by his fellow Mexican Cordova. And this is just not an environment you want to be in. So, combined a poor Rumble driver with a main driver who's nearly 40 and a young driver who's failing to impress, and you've got the recipe for Season 3 Nürburgring all over again. However, if it's one good news for Nürburgring, I do at least expect that somehow at some point this season, Cordova will sneak a podium maybe in a sprint race, albeit he'll probably be clinging on to that by the skin of his teeth. Now, moving on to ninth place, we have Ranga. Now, I was originally going to put Ranga P7, P6, and then I looked at their finances and realised that they only had £4.4 million, which is a slight issue going into a season where most teams have at least 8 to 9 million. But on paper, Ranga do have one of the more promising driver lineups on the grid. 18-year-old Sterling Babakers, off the back of winning WTCL last season, has been appointed as a full-time driver on just 30k a race and a 3-year deal. Now, I do think Babakers will need some time to take up to speed, as I do think she is only ITCL standard at the moment, but she should get a helping hand from a very experienced ITCL champion, 38-year-old Hayley Knight, who's only got 1 year left in her deal, and being one of the more high-profile drivers on the grid, will be looking to prove to everyone why she was nearly wide of a doofer for last season, as she's going to be, in my opinion at least, one of the drivers in the midfield to follow. They've also kept Sarah Rose back in as their Rumble, and whilst I do think Sarah Rose back in is a pretty shit driver, she should be perfectly competent as a Rumble driver, with Nakajima and Shikakawa keeping their seats as youth drivers. Overall, Ranga won't have the finances to keep up with the teams, but expecting the early half for the season, in particular, for Hayley to be in the driver's fight before their money dries up and they drop down to 9th towards the end of the season. Now, moving into 8th place, it's time for you're all going to Brazil, because that's exactly where we're going for our 8th place team. Drake have been a bit of an enigma when it comes to WTCL results. In Season 2, they won it. They were on top of the world. And yet, for whatever reason, they just haven't been able to recapture that magic. In Season 3, they got caught out by the sneaky BOP changes, and the BMW went from an absolute god machine to one of the worst cars on the grid. And then for Season 4, they made some radical changes and told Cordova and family to piss off. And it was a decision that looked stupid at the time, but fair play to them. I just assumed Linda Roder and Goldschmidt was going to get the team relegated almost. Nope, instead they finished 7th, managed to beat out Stoffel, and had 2 drivers who looked very competent, even if Goldschmidt was lacking the consistency, although to be fair, he should have been in JTCL, that's not to be surprising. And now for this season, with Roder going off to Shogun Yakai, Drake needed a competent replacement, and so they signed Ferdinando Corleone on a 1-year deal on 165k a race. Now, if this was Season 2 Corleone, this would be one of the deals to see. But the issue is that Corleone has been lacking some magic for quite a long time, in fact. You see, Corleone last season didn't really do a whole lot, at all, in fact. Spending his time as the Bolt Co-Endurance for one race, which he bottled. And I don't think he raced other than that. So, that was a waste of time. Oh wait, he was Paraguay's Endurance. And he was also shit there. So you've got a veteran driver who can't seem to go fast and a young driver lacking consistency. But I am excited by their Rumble driver in Corno Saba, who last season proved that he was very competent in the iron side. Now, you might be wondering why I put them P8. Well, it's just quite simply that they're better off financially than Ranga and Nürburgring. And whilst upgrades aren't the end of the world, I do think this is going to help, especially if they can get some confidence back into Corleone. Arguably so he's been lacking since he was dropped from Leicester in Season 3. And Goldschmidt, well, if he can get the consistency down, he could be breakthrough star of the season. Now, moving into 7th place, I'm putting Paraguay. Paraguay have always just kind of languid in the bottom half, 8th, 9th and 10th, that seems to be their prospect. And going into this season, not much has really changed. They've put promising JTCL driver Mikael Jensen in the Rumble seat, as well as Frenchman Andre Bavigny in the full-time seat, alongside Senegalese god Damien Dye, who kind of dropped after taking the payback last season. But you've got two very experienced drivers who know what they're doing in the full-time seat, and a young gun looking to make a point to the scene in the Rumble. And I do think Jensen could actually be one of the breakthrough stars of the season. Now, it's yet to be seen whether or not DA is actually just washed or he just dropped after taking the payback. But if he can find his form from early season 4 last year, he could definitely be in with a shout at the title, as could his teammate Andre Bavigny, who, whilst not having the one lap pace of Damien Dye, has definitely got the consistency that Dye has lacked his entire career. Overall, I'm expecting Paraguay to make big steps up for the midfield, finishing P7 with their typical sprint race win here and there, and it's going to be a decent season. Moving into 6th place, and I've got perhaps a dark horse of the season. We'll get into that one in a minute. And that is Ironside. Now, Ironside on paper should be an absolute recipe for disaster. You've got a 19-year-old who wasn't even in the Rumble of ITCL, a 25-year-old who just drowned in WTCL, and a funny Korean man who's about to get shot by North Korea. But, let's evaluate this. Now, Kenneth Lim was on the grid in Season 2, and was fucking shit. Although admittedly in his defence he probably should have even been on the grid that year. But I mean, hey, he didn't even do too badly given his age. Yeah, Conor Ryan beat him convincingly, but there was periods to show that he at least had speed. Season 3 came, and I don't even know where Kenneth Lim was this year. Seriously, did anyone find Kenneth Lim? Oh yeah, that's right. He was endurance driver in ITCL. He started the season well, picking up back-to-back podiums, albeit the form did kind of dry out towards the end of the season, but he still finished a respectable P4, which is not a bad feat given this was his first year in the series. And then came Season 4, with Upside Down winning the ITCL. This was a big chance to impress in the endurance. But unfortunately, Lim didn't quite have the pace of funny Spanish man Jordi Azcona, who took both race wins, with Lim waking in his trail for a Victor de Poir. However, we now move into Season 5 and Lim has worked his way up into the Meltime seat. I do think Lim is going to need to take some time to get up to speed though, but that is where his very quick teammate Danka Krau, who's one of the most OP drivers on the grid, is going to come in. Krau last season proved that when she was actually, given the car that was actually fast, she was arguably one of the fast. She actually could do something with that Ironside. And now with the cars basically being equal, Krau could find herself in the opportunity to take place and sneak a win in the sprint race at some point. And maybe even a win in the first race if circumstances fall her way. Albeit I do think that there might be a bit of a gap between the top 5 and the rest of the field this season. But nonetheless, this is a good lineup for Ironside. It's more what we wanted from them after that clown surface of a Season 4, where they spent half the season sleeping and the second half fluking their way to 12. With a young hot suit in the first seat, a hot female in the second seat, and a hot Korean man in the Rumble seat. Oh yeah, let's discuss Kim Jay. He's meh. Moving into 5th place, we have Waimo. Now, let's say you've just taken over your first brand new team. You've just got rid of Charlotte Thompson, who moved to Velocity. Surely you would, have a second driver lineup. The issue is, they didn't. So they had to put David Lester in the seat and put Camido in Rumble. Now, this on paper shouldn't be a bad idea. Austin Lingvis is still going to carry the team like it's Season 2, and to be fair, David Lester has proven time and time again that he is a decent driver. But the issue is that's in the endurance. None of the full-time seat. We saw what happened in Season 2. And Yoshihiko Kamido is so ITCL standard that it honestly is painful. But the only reason I'm putting him in the top 5 is because of Austin Lingvis, who showed in Season 4 that even when the rest of the team is dying like a dementia patient, that he can still carry the team to a top 5 finish. Which is why I'm predicting them to finish 5th. A step down from last season, as I think they are going to slip further and further down the order if they don't replace Lingvis soon. He's now getting 35 and is probably hand off for carrying this shit show of a team since its existence in Season 1. Now, moving into 4th place, I'm heading over to the Far East, because it's time to talk about Esther Racing. aka the fucking dark horse of the whole fucking season. Now, Mariette Bichette is a driver I have criticised many a times. I don't think she's good, she's been outclassed by Hackinson, but somehow she fluked her way into a full-time seat again. And she has been announced alongside Kaisuke Nomura as the full-time driver's for Esther with Winford in the endurance. Now, in my opinion, I would have put Winford and Nomura in the full-time seat, with Boucher in reserve, in Rumble until she proves that she's actually fucking fast. But I don't want Esther, so this is up to them. Winford being knocked down to reserve, Rumble does feel really harsh though, given how she proved that she could easily match Kaisuke Nomura last season, and both are the same age, and she actually has the benefit of being a fucking lot cheaper. But hey, again, I don't want the team, so it's not my call. However, Noah did prove last season that when he came to Esther that something clicked in the car, as he proved himself to be one of the fastest drivers on the entire grid. And I do definitely think there is an argument that this man could win the title. Unfortunately, I just don't see it happening this year. Boucher will lack the consistency, which is ultimately why I think Esther are going to miss out in the top 3. And I do think Winford is a genuine contender to win the Rumble, but everything is shaping up for this to be another good year for Esther, as once again they flounder their title challenge, but they do finish respectfully in P4. Now, moving into P3, we have the team that likes to collect drivers like their Pokemon cards, and that's Stoffel Racing. Now, Stoffel Autosport have had a troubled history when it comes to getting drivers before, with cars noticeably performing above us. Well, as I would in the 100 metre sprint last season, Ezio flopping harder than Lionel Messi at PSG, and Amara Perez proving to everyone why she's a Paraguayan reject. But nonetheless, this season brings a bit of optimism. With Ives Blur finally out the mentor side and Stoffel and Angela Torres banished to the shadow realm, Paul Balachin has been announced as the full-time driver alongside Ezio de Ventura, with Amara Perez stepping down in the Rumble. Now, Balachin is a very good driver. He is very good, in fact. Season 3 at Nürburgring aside, I'm very certain that team was cursed. He proved himself last season that he's a very good driver, and had it not been for unlucky with reliability and pit stop issues, then Balachin easily could have taken several more wins, and his position would have been a lot higher in the driver's standing. Now, Ezio de Ventura, is it that this man is actually just WTCL's answer to Lionel Messi? We'll have to wait and see. But I'm expecting that Ezio will lose out to Balachin, I think we are coming toward. I think we've already seen peak Ezio in season 3, and I do think that this is a man who's no longer in his prime. Basically, a bit like Fernando Alonso in F1. He's still good, and he could easily get you podiums or wins, but he's just not the prime absolute god that we all know and love. Now, Amara Perez in the Rumble as a 97 rated driver on paper should be a cakewalk, but with this being Amara Perez, you just have to wait and see with her. It honestly depends what kind of mood she's in. I mean, honestly, I'm convinced she suffers some mood swings. Now, moving into second place, it's like deja vu from season 4, as I put Santos behind Envy at the top of the set. Now, Santos got rid of Boucher and appointed Firmino, but they also put Darman in the Rumble, which is just like shooting, which is like finally getting rid of your toenail, and then just starting to shoot yourself in the toe anyway. Darman is a driver I don't rate, somehow managed to make that season 3 do-far look average, and then he was kind of meh in season 4 with Esther, which is why they got Namura. However, Firmino is finally beginning to prove why he was so wanted back in season 1, as he is finally coming into his own as one of the most consistently quick drivers on the grid. But, unfortunately, you're not going to stop the Envy winning machine. Envy are just too good. I mean, Munak's in the form of his life, same as Mendes, and they managed to sneak in Wolfgang Weiss into the Rumble. He finally returns to Envy after nearly winning the title in season 2, which is a nice way for it to go full circle. And I do think that he will probably be the weak link in the team. But it doesn't really matter when you have Mendes and Munat putting in 10 out of 10 week in and week out. So there we go. Now, as for my other predictions, my driver to follow for this season is Kenneth Lim. Kenneth Lim is 19 and on paper one of the most promising young drivers on the grid. And having been tied down for a 3-year deal, there's plenty of time for him to settle at Ironside. Expect the first half of the season for Lim to be him finding his feet in the series, as he just begins to figure out how he's meant to drive in WTCL, having driven in endurance for the last 2 seasons. With him maybe picking up the odd good result here and there, but mostly being outclassed by crap. But expect Kenneth Lim in the second half of the season to become a monster. I'm predicting he'll win a sprint race by the time the season is out. He will have grabbed the podium in the main races, and I do think he won't be a million miles away from Dan Crown, with Ironside looking at a 230k contract, the same way that you look at that smelly friend of yours who honestly brings Tom with the group down and probably hasn't had a wash since about 2007. Now, as for my title dark horse, I've gone for Andre Vavigny. Now, before you excuse me to my mental asylum, firstly, I'm not Yves, and secondly, I think I have a good case. Vavigny is now 31. That's about the ideal age for what you want to be in as a driver on WTCL. He found his seat well at Paraguay last season and had very good consistency and pace, unlike Damien Dye, who only showed up within 4 rounds. And I do just think there is an argument that with 1 year left, he'll be pushing even harder to secure himself a seat for season 6, as I think he's going to be really pushing that Paraguay to the end of its limits. Now, do I think he'll win the title? Probably not. But, let's say that Paraguay shock everyone and actually wake the fuck up this season. I do think that he could be a legitimate title contender. Now, as for my team dark horse, I have gone with Ironside. As I mentioned, I'm expecting Kenneth Lim to become an absolute brilliant driver. And with Dan McCraw doing well in the first half, and then solidly in the second half, I do think there was a case that should teams above them have a bad year, notably maybe Maori or Soffel, I could definitely see Ironside sneaking in there. Now, as for my other predictions, and I'm predicting that we're going to lose an absolute talent of his era, as I think at the end of the season, we're going to see Thorvald Hackerson retire at the age of 43. Hackerson only has 1 year left on his 240k contract, and I can't really see Santos renewing this for another season, as by that point he'll be 94 and clearly past his best. So I'm expecting Hackerson, after laying the torch for Firmino this season, I reckon he is going to retire at the end of the season on what would be a brilliant career for any driver. And I've been one of the drivers in WTCL history to have not won the championship. Although you could also make a case for his Norwegian, for his Scandinavian brother, Øystein Lindqvist. As for manufacturers, I'm predicting this to be a bit more like Season 2. I.e., most of the manufacturers are equal, and it's going to come down more to the drivers and the team's principles as to how well or not that's going to go. Not much to really explain here. We already discussed Nürburgring falling off, so let's discuss my next prediction, which is basically a dead cert every year, which is Paraguay will win a sprint race at some point. This is kind of a joke prediction, but it's also going to happen. I mean, this is Paraguay. They win sprint races, it's just what they do. And I'm also predicting a big principal switch up over at Stoffel, as I'm predicting Yves Blur to be fired, with the Stoffel board fed up of spending fuck ton of cash on a load of drivers, and our team principal, who's clearly more incompetent than Alexander Bakker. Take that back, he's a nice bloke. And whilst Yves Blur has definitely got the ability to win the title, especially with that driver lineup, nothing ever seems to fall in place, and I'm expecting that the owners will have had enough, fire him, and appoint someone else. Now, onto my driver's top 5. And at 5th place, I'm going to go for a shock here. But not for the right reason, as I'm predicting S.A. Munat to drop to 5th. Now, there's valid reasons for this. Notably that he is on a upwards of 5-year deal on 220k at the age of 31. Plus, towards the end of last season, we definitely saw Munat's pace beginning to dry up. And I can see that form starting over towards the start of this season, as Munat will need to find his confidence. But he'll do that fine and finish P5. Now, next up is the two Santos boys, as I can see Firmino just missing out behind Hackerson in what will be Hackerson's last year. As Firmino will put down a good benchmark in his first season to give Santos faith that they can trust him to be the first. Now, so I'm going to put Billy Donwan as the other full-time driver for Season 6, the team will be fine. Over at Stoffel, I can see Paul Balajin really coming into his stride now, as he managed his runner-up in the drivers. Balajin is a driver who's always been about confidence. If the car is good for him, and he feels confident driving it, and he keeps getting good results, Balajin is a good driver. We saw this in Season 2, and we saw this in Season 4. The issue is when Balajin starts getting a few bad results together, he doesn't really seem to break out the cycle, which is why it will be important for Stoffel to start the season well, and not like how they started out Season 5. Otherwise, they might actually... Season 4. Otherwise, they might have just put Lewis Shaw in the car. However, my driver's title winner will be Mendes. Mendes is 32 and now in the prime of his career, and I'm fully expecting him, after being beat by S.A. Munat last year, to have his pride overtake him, and so he's pushing the MV to the limit, so he'll win the drivers. Now, will this happen? Maybe not. But I do think Mendes is a very good driver nonetheless, and I can definitely see him at least being in the top 5. And I'm so confident that if Ildefonso Mendes doesn't finish in the top 5, then I'll make a YouTube video explaining why Lewis Shaw is the greatest racing driver of all time. But after that rambling prediction video, we've been here for about half an hour now. Those are my predictions. Let me know why I'm wrong in the comments. I'll block you anyway. And yeah, goodbye.